All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are finally back. It has been a few weeks out, but we are once again finally back for the brand new MMA podcast, All Things MMA. Welcome once again to the Midst Martial Marks podcast, sponsored by the lovely shirts over at fuckittees.com. And we have a very exciting one here for you today for episode 4, our biggest guest to date. And I'm very happy and proud to have him on the podcast. Just a very generous guy. And truly, it's just very awesome to have him here. So obviously, I have to give him an introduction. Of course, this is our first ever professional fighter on the podcast, and he fights out of Springfield, Missouri. As an amateur, he holds a 7-3 amateur record, but more impressively, a 6-0 undefeated record as a professional. With all 6 of those victories coming by way of finish, whether that has been TKO, grounded pound, or submission. He is the number 6 pro light heavyweight in North America on Tapology. Also, the number 125th pound for pound in North America, the number 2 pro light heavyweight in the Midwest of the USA, and of course, the number 1 light heavyweight in both Kansas and Missouri on Tapology, the former basketball player. Ladies and gentlemen, he's also the reigning Synergy FC light heavyweight champion and reigning Peak FC light heavyweight champion. So I'm very happy to have him on the podcast, folks. This is your mother's favorite juice bots. This is Julius Juicebox Walker, my friend, my brother. How are you doing?
Dude, I'm doing great. That's probably the best introduction I've ever received in my life.
Well, I'm honored. I'm very honored, man. I wanted to start off this podcast with obviously talking about your career so far. So, as I mentioned before, it sits a no 100% finish rate, and it hasn't been against slouches either. You would think with many people who start out their career, especially as a professional fighter, they're trying to keep that undefeated record and they're trying to cherry pick sometimes, whether that's in boxing or MMA or etc. But not you, though. You have already in your career fought Ultimate Fighters, tough guests and Illuminis, GLORY Kickboxers, former UFL and PFL fighters. It's just been incredible for you right now, man. It's awesome. Of course, those fighters being Niall Bartlin, Bevan Lewis, and Myron Dennis. And that last fight against Myron Dennis, man, was it was incredible, especially with the first round finish.
Yeah, man, I've been really lucky. I've got to get in there with some good guys early in my career, and it
Yeah,
gives me a lot of confidence that I've got some experience against some actual competition. So if I do get the opportunity to fight on maybe Contender Series or the UFC later this year, I'll have at least had some level of competition. I won't have to take up five steps up. Maybe it's only 1 or 2 steps up.
exactly. And the only problem there would probably be the atmosphere, which I truly believe you would get used to in no time. Um, it has already just been incredible for you, as I mentioned. Myron Dennis, of course, that I believe was probably your best victory, even though Bevan Lewis and Niall Bartlin has that experience already in the Ultimate Fighter. Well, not Bevan Lewis since he was a two-time Contender Series winner. Myron
hmm
Dennis did actually fight in season 23 of the Ultimate Fighter before, I believe, but
hmm
uh, probably out of all of your opponents so far, it seems like that guy right there probably has the best resume, win or lose. Of course, fighting people like Ryan Spann, Corey Anderson, beating former title challengers such as Paul Blentello. So I really do have to ask, man. So far in your career, I know you're proud of it so far. Who do you believe has been your toughest test? And probably the man, well, I would say the fighter that you are most proud of to actually defeat.
Well, I would say for me, the toughest test was Niall Bartling, just because of the stylistic matchup with
Right.
him being a D1 wrestler. it presented a little bit of a challenge because normally I'm the one that likes to press the wrestling. So I kind of had to take a little bit of a different approach. I felt like Niall had cardio issues, and I felt like if I could ride out the first round against him, I would probably be able to beat him in the second or the third. And that's kind of how that one went. He won the first round. He took my back, and he had some pretty decent moments, but
Yeah.
I wasn't ever in too much danger. And I remember as soon as the second round started and he took his first shot, it was like a different fighter. He was very very exhausted already after only one round. And then I would definitely agree that Myron has the best resume. It was just such a good matchup for me because he's a great striker, but he's a pretty poor grappler if I'm being honest. He's a little bit of an older guy too, so I think his physicality is starting to decline. He didn't really feel very strong. Now he did crack me with a really really good shot to start that fight. So
Yes.
it wasn't like it was just easy peasy going the whole time. But once I got a hold of him, I could kind of feel that I was like, man, I feel like I can do whatever I want right now.
Yeah, and obviously with those last three opponents that you fought, they have absolutely been no slouches. Niall
Hmm.
Bartlin, so far in your professional career, Niall Bartlin is the only one who has been able to escape that first round with you.
Hmm.
Um, and now you got this upcoming fight for Synergy FC 19. It was supposed to be on February 22nd. Now it's moved to
Hmm.
March 1st, and that
Hmm.
is, of course, against Mark Currier, if I'm saying his name right.
Hmm.
But Mark Currier, um, of course, with many people now having their eyes on you, many former fighters after that Myron Dennis performance, for example, Corey Anderson gave you some good credit for the
That
victory.
was super cool,
Hey man, I bet that felt satisfying. Corey
dude.
Anderson
I
is no
was
joke.
I was fangirling a little bit. I was kind of over the moon.
Yeah, man, Corey Anderson. A lot of people give Corey Anderson shit, but I mean, I like Corey Anderson. I think he does. I think he did great work against Johnny Walker and Vadim Nemkov in that first fight. He's a
Yep.
very good fighter. Um, but with Mark Currier, of course, a lot of people see your last three opponents, obviously, and they're probably wondering to themselves, including me, why to step down, and which kind of seems like a fight that has high risk, low reward standards if your goal is to get into the UFC.
Yeah, it was kind of one of those things where it wasn't super easy for us to find find a high level opponent. A lot of the
Right,
guys that a lot of the guys that I would be able to fight that are the other top prospects probably are kind of getting to the point where they're like, I would fight that guy, but I would rather it be on Contender Series.
right,
And if you look at it, the way that I kind of look at it is you've got two types of fighters. You've got your fighters that are fighting for the paycheck, and you've got
yes,
your fighters that are fighting to try to become a world champion and make it to the highest level. And if you look at the set of fighters that are fighting for a paycheck, there you could take an easier fight to make probably a similar amount of money that you would make fighting me. So a lot of those guys are not as interested in fighting me anymore. And then with the guys that are trying to become a champion and make it to the highest level, they're also typically trying to manage their careers the right way. So for them to take a fight with someone like myself, they're probably going to want it to be on a big stage, whether that
right,
be like on like a main card of an LFA type thing or on the Contender Series also. And also, to be honest with you, man, I fought those three fights with Niall, Bevon, and Myron, and
yeah,
kind of the way that I look at it is those guys are right around major organization level, and I fought all three of them for regional pay. Um, the way that I see it, if I had fought those three guys in the UFC, um, that I probably would have gotten at least a bonus out of those three performances, at least one bonus, and
oh
would have
yeah,
made probably over $100,000, and I made maybe 1/10 of that. So kind of the way that I saw it whenever I was getting ready to try to line up my next fight was I wanted it to be pretty local. I
right,
make a lot more money when I fight locally because of I can sell quite a few tickets and I get percentage of ticket commission, and also I generate a lot more. I get a lot more sponsorship interest whenever I'm fighting locally than when I'm fighting far away. So it was really one of those things where I was kind of weighing the financial side of it as well as thinking like, what is in terms of how much I'm getting paid. I was like, I don't know if I want to continue to fight these really high level guys whenever I feel like I'm already really really close to that shot on Contender Series.
Right.
But I felt like I needed to get a fight in early 2025. I felt like if I sat around and waited all the way until the fall for Contender Series, that it would kind of be a bad look. I don't think the UFC is interested in guys who are entitled and sit around and wait for them to call them. So I
Yes.
wanted to make sure that I stayed active and showed them that like I'm still willing to take fights. I'm not just going to sit and wait for them to call me, but I'm hoping that with a victory over Currier, I'll be a 7-0, hopefully with 7 finishes, with the 3 big victories that I do have. I feel like that would be enough of a resume for me to be able to maybe get a shot on at least maybe Contender Series. I feel like with the amount of experience I have, even though I've fought some good guys, I'll still only, even after this fight, I'll only have 7 pro fights, and I'll only have been professional for a little over 2 years. And I'll by the fall, I'll have been training in total for 6 years. I had no prior combat sports background. I didn't wrestle. I didn't box as a kid. I literally learned how to punch less than 6 years ago. So
Huh.
I feel like the Contender Series isn't even necessarily a bad idea for me because I could fight somebody with. Although whoever I fight is probably going to have overall more experience than me, it'll be a little bit closer than if I was trying to jump straight into the UFC rankings and or the UFC, the main roster and fight the guys that are on the main roster.
Right. And when you put it like that, man, I absolutely understand that the money and the sponsorships are truly a lot better. Um, Fighting lower ranked competition instead of higher ranked competition, So I absolutely
Mm-hmm.
get it. But in no disrespect to Mark Currier as well, because in the sport of MMA, anything can happen, and we've seen it.
Exactly.
We've seen it plenty of times over. I mean, people like Wes Sims uh, knocked out Kimbo Slice before. That's how
Yeah.
weird the sport is, man. Um, and speaking of experience with that fight, a lot of people would think because of his well, actually looking at it now, yeah, he might actually have more experience than you overall in total fights. Um
Mm-hmm.
are you worried at that at all? I don't think you are, honestly, since you're fighting people like Myron Dennis. You fought a whole lot of experienced people already. But in this fight, obviously, I hope you're not looking down at Mark Currier and, not being cocky, just instead being confident. What do you see as the most dangerous aspect of your opponent?
He's got a really powerful right hand, and he's also very very durable and really tough. He's actually fought some pretty good competition. He fought Bailey Schoenfelder on Bellator. He
Yes,
fought Alvin Hines, who is a pretty good fighter, on LFA recently, and he also fought Darian Abbey, who is also another one of the better guys around here. So he's
right.
fought some really solid competition, and he's typically proven really hard to finish. He's got a really strong right hand, and I would say overall his game, his boxing is actually it looks a little funky, but I think it's actually better than a lot of people are giving him credit for. And I don't think he's a great grappler by any means, but I think he's actually pretty competent down there and knows pretty well how to defend himself and how to move around.
Right. Yeah, man.
Um,
Mark Currier, and what exactly happened that made this fight go ahead and move on to the first instead of making it happen at the 22nd of February?
well, it was actually for me. It was really disappointing because if it had happened in February, it would have been here in Springfield, and that's where I live and where I train.
Yeah.
So I would have sold a ton of tickets, and I would have made even more money. But now it's happening in Kansas City, which is really. I mean, it's only a few hours away, so it's not the worst thing in the world. But what really happened, just to be completely candid and honest, is he took that fight with Alvin Hines. If you look on his Tapology, it was January 25th.
Mm-hmm.
He took that short notice fight, which was pretty frustrating for me because he and I were already booked, like with a signed bout agreement and everything before he even took that fight.
Right.
And he went and he took that short notice fight and he got TKO'd. Even though he did submit to strikes, it's still I believe somehow that counts as a TKO, and he received a 30-day medical suspension. So
Ah, yeah.
he was medically suspended until February 24th, literally 2 days after we would have fought.
Yeah.
And the state of Minnesota refused to release him. So we actually tried to find a replacement opponent so I could stay on the 22nd card, but
Mhm.
it was just really tough to find anybody on to take the fight on 2 weeks notice. So I was actually me that came up with the bright idea. I was like, well, shoot, Synergy has a card a week later. Why don't we just fight him then? And
Exactly.
all parties were in agreement, and then it just kind of happened that way.
I see. And obviously, with canceled fights and a lot of negotiating, you have had a bit of an issue before.
Hmm.
Of course, Eric Braley before. I believe you
Hmm.
guys were supposed to fight on two separate occasions, and there
Hmm.
was also talks about. Let me see here. There was a former UFC fighter, I believe, that was supposed to fight you as well. I believe.
Hmm.
I think that was before Niall Bartlin or Bevan Lewis.
Yeah,
And
it
that
would have been on the day of Bevon. It was
Bevan, yeah,
it I can't remember the dude's name. It was like Robertson or something like that. I think he
yeah,
was like a
Carl
45.
Robertson. Carl
Yeah, yeah,
Robertson.
that guy. I
I
was
was
supposed
trying to
to,
think
but
too.
no, yeah, that one it never got fully set up, so I'm not sure. I don't even know if that guy's still fighting. It had never that one had never been set in stone. With the Eric Braley thing, I remember I was supposed to fight him in my second pro fight, and I ended up fighting Huggy Bear instead.
Yeah,
Brian Porritt was who I fought instead, but I was supposed to fight Eric Braley, and he got hurt. And then we were supposed to fight on January 20th, which would have been my third pro fight,
yeah,
and we both made weight and everything. And then on the night of the fight, he failed the pre-fight physical. His blood pressure was too high, so the fight got scrapped literally hours before it was supposed to happen.
yeah, and that's really unfortunate, man. Eric Braley. Just looking at his topology record right now, he has not fought for a while. He has not fought for a while. So I wonder what's going on with him. Hopefully he's doing
Hope,
okay.
hope, yeah. Hopefully he's getting that blood pressure down. Yeah, that
Exactly.
one was tough. That one was tough, but luckily, Chris Gregory and Zach Cummings. Zach Cummings, he's the guy that owns Synergy FC, the former UFC fighter, and they
Yeah.
actually really hooked me up. They still paid me my show and my win money that night, which was really really helpful at the time. Just the position that I was in with my family and everything. So
Yes.
huge shout out to them. They really took care of me whenever that happened.
That's really nice of that guy to do that for you. You
Hmm.
said it was
It was
Zach
awesome.
Cummins, right?
Yeah, yeah, Zach Cummings,
Yeah, Zach Cummins was fun. He was very
the
fun.
underbite assassin.
Yes.
That's what I like. I like to give him crap because he's got such a massive underbite. That's why the guy never got dropped.
Yeah, man, and probably one of the best retirements ever with that guy, honestly.
Oh yeah,
With his fight versus Ed Herman.
yep. That was really cool. So the night of that fight was 1 week before my pro debut,
Yeah.
and at one of the local bars in town, they had a big watch party for Zach, and I remember us all watching that, and like his daughter coming in the cage. I mean, Zach's a really good dude. He's helped me out and given me a lot of guidance over the last few years.
Yeah, man, and I believe, with talking to someone like Zach Cummins, really does come with a lot of benefits and maybe meeting a whole lot of new people because obviously he trained at Factoriettes, I believe. And,
Yep.
that comes with a good bit of fighters as well. Of course, Brandon Royval being one of those people, just a whole bunch of former UFC fighters and current UFC fighters as well. Chris Gutierrez, of course, Cody Brundage, Court McGee,
Hmm.
David Onama,
Hmm.
just a whole lot of them. Have you ever met any of those guys at all? Has he ever taken you out to factoriettes maybe?
No, so me and Zach are also actually managed by the same guy. We're both or Zach was managed by Jason House, and now I am too.
Right.
Um, and we had made plans for me to go to Factory X for a little bit. This was after I fought Nile, but my second daughter was due in like a month after it, so it kind of didn't end up working out.
Right.
Oh, Nama is also from Missouri. Like he started off at Glory,
Yeah.
and he was still like when I started. I think he had just recently turned professional, or he was finishing up his amateur career. So he was one of those guys that you heard about because he was one of the top guys in the area. But I haven't ever actually met any of those guys out there. No.
Right. Yeah, I understand. And Missouri, man, has always been a lovely home for fighters here in MMA, man. We just have,
Hmm.
there's so many of them, and obviously still a lot of them in the UFC. You know, Michael Chandler and Michael
Yep.
Johnson are big ones, obviously. But David
Buckley.
Onama, man, he has been on a roll, man. I believe his only losses has been to Mason Jones, where he was severely outsized, I believe, and
Yep.
Nate the Train, which was a war of a fight.
Yeah.
So he's still doing great things, man. I'm excited to see his fight with Giga.
Dude, I think he could. I think that's going to be a really interesting fight. One of those that could really catapult his career, and it's definitely Onama's a guy that's on the way up, and Chikadze. You would have to think that he's probably on his way out. He's getting a little older, so I
Yeah,
think that'll be a
I
big one.
understand. I think the activity is really going to show between the two of them, and who
Yeah.
really wants it more. Giga, you know, that last fight with Arnold Allen, he didn't look like himself. He didn't really
No.
look like himself, and I mean, I feel like it was I believe it was an injury that put him out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an injury that put him out, and he just hasn't looked right. Even in that return fight with Alex Caceres, I really believe Caceres won the fight. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
no disrespect to Giga, but I do believe Alex Caceres won the fight.
100%.
Yeah, but David Onama, I've always been a fan of him ever since he actually made his debut against Mason Jones, and just to see where
That
he's
was a
heading
pretty
right
solid
now.
fight too, if I remember correctly.
Say that again.
That was a solid fight too. He because it was
Oh
up a
yeah,
weight class and everything, and he performed pretty well. Mason Jones was a tough guy.
yeah, Mason Jones, man, he kind of had a weird stint in the UFC, but you know, ever since then, he's been on a four-fight winning streak. He might be on his way back here soon. I'd like to see him back.
Definitely possible. Hey, and speaking of Missouri guys that are having some success in the UFC, we can't forget Buckley. Buckley's a
Oh
St. Louis
yeah,
guy. You
we
can't forget
cannot forget him.
Charles Johnson. That's another St. Louis guy.
Oh yeah,
Sean Woodson, another St. Louis guy.
all them guys.
Garrett Armfield actually started off here in Springfield.
Yeah.
Also, Miranda Maverick started off here in Springfield,
Phew.
and Evan Elder is from St. Louis.
That is a great lineup of fighters right there that you just named.
Right? We're not. This state's not too bad, man. I'm telling you. One of these days, my biggest goal is to be a UFC champion. But one of my biggest goals is, it's almost it's not. This is a little bit less realistic, I think. But I would love to hopefully maybe one day have a UFC event in my hometown of Springfield. I just don't know if we're a big enough city for it.
I don't know, man. I'd like to see it. I obviously wouldn't mind. I'd actually
Right?
probably drive up there and actually watch, man.
Let's
Seriously.
go. Come on. Tell Dana.
Yeah, man. Dana and his team better be on the lookout for you, dude, because I mean, I feel like you should be at the next Contender series. I do really believe that. And when it comes to maybe fighters that you should probably meet, I know Alex Pereira's training partner, I think his name's Yusri Bulgari.
Hmm. Hmm.
I feel like that right there is probably one of the best fights that would give you both attention, win
Hmm.
or lose. I feel like that's probably your best fight for the Contender series, really.
Yeah, I think that would be a cool one. I know that another light heavyweight that's making waves on the regional scene is the Luke Fernandez guy I think he's from
Yes.
New Jersey or something like that.
Yep.
That guy's really good. Those those are two of the top ones I can think of off the top of my head. Whatever I don't know how to say that guy's name, but that dude's a beast too. He's really good.
Yeah, our casual aura is showing, man. Seriously, we
Yeah,
gotta we
dude,
gotta
his
we gotta
name
get
is
it
too
together,
hard.
dude. We gotta get it together. But I do feel like that's probably one of the best fights for you right now. And I think right now on Tapology, he is the number one light heavyweight in North America. Just looking down this list of people, Chuck Campbell's on there. Carl
hmm
Albrechtsen is always there. Haven't seen
hmm
him in a while though. I wonder what really happened to him. Christian
I think
Edwards
I
is a
think
good one.
I'm pretty sure Chuck Campbell just beat Albrechtsen if like within the last couple months.
Right. I haven't checked up on that fight. I haven't really seen what both guys have been doing. That's really my fault. Yeah, he did. He did fight Campbell. He got finished in the second round. Campbell beat his ass, I
Yep.
guess. Yeah, I guess, man. But I also wanted to talk about your team so far, man, because I know you're at Team Fusion. Um,
hmm
And right now, just looking at it, you have a few people who have fought for Bellator before. When it really comes down to it, I do feel like, other than Austin Clem, who is obviously a trainer there, um, you
hmm
might be probably their biggest guy yet in the gym. What do you think about your gym so far? Because I know there's been a lot of people over there that has helped you. John Beckett is a good one. Corey
hmm
Beck, Honey Badger Johnson, just a good
Yep.
bit of people. Um, what do you think, man? Because I mean, obviously, you train with those guys. You guys give each other feedback and information. I would believe every day, weekly,
hmm
monthly, however it goes over there in the gym.
hmm
What's going on over there at Team Fusion?
Man, we've definitely got a good group of guys coming up. We've always got a really solid group of guys that exclusively do jujitsu. So like,
Right.
there's never a shortage of people to roll with. And then right now we've got a couple of young amateur guys that are at 205. Like we have two. One of them, they're just starting out. He's only 2-0, but he's a blue belt and he wrestled. His name's Jack Hewitt. He's
Right.
really really solid. He's like 6'6". The kid's super athletic. He's like 20. He's like 9. I think he's 20 years old. So he's going to be one for the future. And then we got another one named Spencer Michaud, who's only 18 years old. He's having his second fight tonight, actually, in Florida.
Oh yeah.
So those guys are younger and they're amateurs, but whenever they can kind of combine and Shark Tank me, they can kind of help me out and give me a good push. And then some of the other ways that I've been able to get good training in Springfield is we've got Marco Hutch doesn't train at Fusion. He runs his own gym called Doghouse MMA,
Mm-hmm.
but he's another solid guy that comes up and gives me some good rounds. And then actually Julius and Gliskus, he is a former Bellator title challenger.
Yeah.
Um, he lives in St. Louis and he's actually came down. Whenever I was training for Bavon, he came down and trained with me for a full week, and we did 2 a days every day the whole time, and got a ton of work in together. And occasionally, I'll drive up to St. Louis and train with guys up there, like at St. Charles MMA and the Wolves Den, and get work with all of those guys. But Fusion's a really good place, man. There's a lot of up and coming amateurs right now. Obviously, Springfield isn't like a it's not a huge city, and we don't have a huge gym with a bunch of pro fighters. We've really got our main core of me, Austin Clem, and John Beckett are the main three pros, and then we've got quite a few good amateurs on the come up, and then we're really just trying to build those guys up. As I get farther into my career, obviously I have to continue to try to seek out the best rounds I can find. Like I was lucky enough this camp the week before last, I went out to Vegas and trained at Extreme Couture for a few days, so I got some really good rounds in there as well.
Yeah, and I would, bet obviously with the already getting compliments from many good UFC fighters and really current fighters alike, not just UFC. There would have to be with you, of course, traveling gym to gym as well. There has to
Mhm.
be obviously some really good guys that you've been training with as well. Is there any people that you would like to mention that you have trained with as well, man? Because I'm sure there's been a pretty good bunch of important people. and notable names as well.
Yeah, when I was at Extreme, I was only there for a few days, but I got to get a little bit of work in with Ebo Aslan,
Yeah.
who I really think after training with him, I really think that he's gonna do some really big things at 205 here in the next few years. And then I also got a little bit of work in with Carl Williams while I was up there, heavyweight in the UFC.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's also going to be one of those guys that he's going to be a tough out for anybody at heavyweight because he's such a good wrestler and he's actually got some he's in good shape and he works hard. Those were a couple of guys that it was really cool. Whenever I was out there, I think I got a little bit of work in with Mansour Abdul Malik. I got a round in with Shabazian when I was out there. It was really cool. All those guys are awesome. Extreme Couture was a really cool place. Everybody treated me really, really well. And then whenever it was time to get rounds in, everybody gave me really good rounds and kicked my butt. So it was a really awesome place.
Yeah, man, and I'm really glad that you are getting the experience like you are, man. Aslan, dude, I feel like that guy. I agree with you. I feel like he's going to be doing some really good things over at light heavyweight. He's going to do very good. And that debut that he had, man, against Anton, ah, man, that
Yeah,
was
that fight was
good.
fun. That fight
Yeah.
was really fun. And man, he's very powerful and he's just
Oh,
a
I know
really good
that.
dude. Really good dude. Like you know what I mean? He was really cool to me. He was really nice, especially considering I'm just some new regional guy in their gym and he actually took the time to, kind of give me some advice and work with me a bit. And I really do. I think that he's going to do some really big things at 205. He could be that next guy that people start saying is a potential future, title challenger maybe.
Yeah, and I would have no problem seeing him get to that level. Absolutely, I am a good fan of the Last Ottoman, so
Yep.
very excited to see that guy. And Shabazian is a good one too. Obviously,
Mhm.
Carl Williams, I think, is a great grappler.
Yeah.
And he has had pretty good upsets in the past, man. I know a lot of people were hoping Justin Tafa would beat him, and maybe even Chase Sherman. Obviously, he shut them out both.
Yep.
Carl Williams, I do see him getting a ranking here in the future, especially with seeing how my boy from Louisville, because I do come from Louisville, Dontel Mays is ranked now
Yep.
in the UFC. Yeah, man, heavyweight to me just seems like a very wide open door right now. I mean, a lot of good opportunities that the UFC give you as a heavyweight from what I've seen and what kind of matches we have already seen. It's been it's been pretty good, I tell you, man.
hmm Yeah. Heavyweight. There's always heavyweight and light heavyweight. There's just so much fewer fighters in the division that it's a much quicker path to the top.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and I think as you go higher in the weight divisions in MMA, the determining factor leans more towards physicality and athleticism.
Yes.
So if you're a stronger, more athletic guy that's in really good shape, you can go really, really far just off of that.
Yeah, man, and that's what makes someone like Tom Aspinall so special, dude, because the
Yeah.
speed and the athleticism that he has, it's well, we really just haven't seen it in a long time, I mean, Junior
Mm-hmm.
Dos Santos was very good, Cain Velasquez, obviously. We haven't really seen, maybe even Prime Arlovsky with the hand speed,
Mm-hmm.
we haven't really seen someone like this in a long time, and I feel like because of that and all these finishes that Tom Aspinall has been getting, whether he's been injured or not, especially that Sergey Pavlovich fight where he was injured and he
Mm-hmm.
knocked out the knockout beast in the first round and
Yep.
just made him not even look the same now from these past fights that we've been seeing from Sergey.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Aspinall is a very special fighter, and honestly, I don't think I blame John Jones for trying to get the highest paycheck he can possible to fight someone like that.
Exactly. And honestly, at this point, John Jones definitely. I feel like he's earned the right to say, "Hey, you guys gotta give me a massive payday."
Oh yeah.
Um, and he's earned the right to have a little bit of pull and kind of ask for what he wants. Because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
I think one thing that a lot of people are kind of not really realizing when it comes to that fight is win or lose. I don't think it has much of an effect on John Jones's legacy.
Oh yeah.
Um, it doesn't really do much for him. And even if he were to even if he were to lose that fight, I don't really feel like it negatively affects him. I think people almost forget the fact that he won his first UFC title in 2011. I believe I was either 11 or 12 years old whenever John Jones won his first UFC title. So it's
Yeah.
like there are guys entering, like, how old was Raul Rosas back then? Raul Rosas was probably in like freaking kindergarten
Oh yeah.
whenever John Jones won his first UFC title. So it's like there are UFC fighters now who were in elementary school as long as he's been a champion. So that kind of longevity in this sport, especially in the light heavyweight and heavyweight divisions, is just unreal.
Exactly, man. And of course, everyone is trying to be as good or obviously better than the greatest of all time. That is
Yep.
obviously everybody's goal. Um, and I do agree with you, man. To be honest, I really don't know if win or lose this really helps John's legacy because
No.
he really has done everything, and you know, even before he got the heavyweight title, even with that fight that people like George St. Pierre when he got that second title, you know, that was the unique thing of the debate right there between George and John Jones at that time. And
Mhm.
then, you know, when John Jones he gets up there and he beats the number one heavyweight at the time, Cyril Gahn.
Mhm.
I mean, it kind of makes it look it just doesn't make it look the same. There's like no debate, obviously.
Exactly. And John Jones made Cyril Gahn look so easy that people minimized the victory.
Oh yeah.
You know.
John man, he will study you. He will study, he will find problems and obviously, you know, a lot of people talk about the activity. Um I mean, to be honest, I don't mind, but you know, if he's not going to fight Tom Aspinall, I do believe he should at least vacate the belt. There is nothing for him, and obviously, he doesn't need a belt to sell a fight. He can do
No.
whatever he wants, honestly.
Exactly.
Yeah. But John Jones, he's doing great, and I honestly hope the Tom Aspinall fight does happen. Cannot wait for that. But another fight, obviously, that people are looking at, and of course, yourself as a light heavyweight, is the biggest fight right now at light heavyweight. That's Alex Pereira and Magomed Ankalaev.
Oh yeah.
Um, that fight right there, it's going to be interesting, man. Who do you have for that fight, honestly?
You know, my head wants to say that Ankalaev is going to go out there and get the victory. Use his
Right.
wrestling and get the job done. But I think that since nobody has tested Pereira's grappling in such a long time, because Jiri barely shot on him, Jamal Hill barely shot on him.
Yeah,
Like,
we haven't seen it really since Jan Blachowicz.
exactly. So I could see Pereira getting the job done, especially if Ankalaev is still susceptible to the low kicks. I'm
Right.
actually super pumped for that because I've never been to a UFC event and I'm actually going to that one.
Yeah?
Dude, yeah, I'm super freaking excited.
Man, I bet that's going to be good.
Yeah, yeah,
Seriously, dude. But Alex
probably gonna lose
Pereira.
it.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be great. If you really want my opinion on it, I I think just from what I've seen, obviously with the sport of MMA, Magomed can absolutely crack
Hmm.
Pereira. I feel like if he does want to win this fight, he at least needs to mix it up. At least, don't just stand in front of the guy. Don't just
Yeah,
stand, you know, with the two-time double division glory kickboxer. That's just asking for a death sentence right there. Um,
exactly.
yeah, and I don't understand why a lot of people just don't shoot on Alex Pereira. I know he's a big boy, obviously, so maybe that's why. Um,
Well,
but
part of it is he's not fighting wrestlers. You know what I mean?
yeah,
He's fighting. He's been and there really isn't a ton of wrestlers at 205.
Yeah. And that's what really makes people like you really stand out. I really do hope you get into the UFC, dude, and I truly believe you will.
Hmm. I
Um
appreciate that big time.
yep, no problem. And honestly, this is a very good card. I believe Alex Pereira and Ankalaev, that's free 13, I believe.
Yep,
Yeah.
313. Dan
Yeah.
Hooker and Justin Gaethje
Yep.
was on
That's
that
going to be
card.
good. That's going to be great. Bruno, the Hulk Ferreira's on the card.
Ooh,
That's going to be good. Ozzy Diaz is on the card. Alex Morono,
yep,
Fire Francis Marshall. Just a lot of good guys. Another guy I mentioned before, Chris Gutierrez, he's on the card.
yep.
He's taking on Matsumoto, and Bobby King Green taking on Mauricio Rufy. That's going to be an interesting fight.
That is a fun fight.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not too sure about Mauricio Rufy, since that last fight he had. I'm just I'm not too sure. And I know King Grain, man. I mean, I know he's gotten clipped a few times, but I mean,
He's always game.
when he starts going, he goes. Seriously, he's so good
Yeah,
at what he
Bobby
does.
Green is always game. You know, the thing that I think is going to be Rufy's biggest potential issue is his style takes up so much freaking energy.
Oh yeah, the
Like when
cardio.
you, dude, when you kick like that and you do all that fancy stuff, man, it just takes up so much energy, and I think it's going to be really hard to sustain that over the duration of an entire fight.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's a reason that this guy has only had one decision, and that decision being this last fight. And obviously, he looked very tired at the end of that fight. Um, Even before the third round started, he looked pretty tired. But Mauricio
Hmm.
Rufy, he's a very exciting guy. And with Bobby Green, man, I hope before one of them retires, I would like to see Bobby Green, well, really Ken Green. I want to see King Green versus Michael Johnson. I feel like that's a great fight right there.
Yeah, that's got to happen.
Yeah, that is a must.
Has to.
Yeah, and you mentioned him earlier, dude, but listen, I'm like one of the biggest Charles Johnson supporters there is. I
That
love
dude's
that
awesome.
guy. Skullet Gang for life, dude. I cannot wait to see what he does, and I feel like UFC right now with his upcoming fight, they're kind of lowballing him right now. I don't understand why this fight is happening, really.
Yeah, why he's not getting a ranked guy.
Yeah,
You
I
know, I
mean,
think he definitely deserves it. I mean, we'll see where it goes. I'm hoping that he gets it done in this next one so that he is able to get that ranked opportunity because he has shown a true willingness. Like a lot of people say that they will fight anybody, but that dude, like you cannot argue that he will fight literally anybody.
oh yeah, because he will. He will fight anybody, and a lot of people were thinking Joshua Van was going to put it on Charles Johnson. And I
Yep.
mean, it was 1-1. I will admit, I believe it was 1-1 going into the third, but then out of nowhere, he just started to let loose. And he's just pulling out everything that he can. Um, then he ultimately finished Joshua Van, dude, and that was amazing. Really, he's had a lot of upsets now all of a sudden just because of how his UFC career really started because it was kind of bumpy at first. You
Yeah.
make he made his debut against Muhammad Mokayev. He had a very debatable split decision victory against Shuma Gulov. Um, of course, a split decision loss against Ode Osborne, and I mean, he's fighting killers. He's always fought killers. Um,
Yep.
but now with this four-fight winning streak, dude, and now he's taking on Temirov. It's going to be very interesting to see what Charles Johnson does in this fight, man. And I cannot root against my boy. I just cannot root against that guy.
Never. I think he's a 5 round fighter too.
Yeah,
Uh,
he is. I really do believe that. I think the I think the Mota fight before he got into the UFC really showed that.
100%.
Yeah, man, it's Charles Johnson. He's a great guy, and I do feel like he's going to get into the title picture here soon, or at least top five. Um, he's been doing good for himself, man. Cannot wait to see what's more for him. Um, I want to go back on those victories that you have, man. I really do, because I mean, it just astounds me, and it stuns it really surprises a lot of other people, with the caliber of fighters that you have already been fighting so far. Of course, we throw his new we threw his name out there a couple of times, sorry about that. um, of course, Bevon Lewis, you know um, that is certainly a interesting fighter right there, the extraordinary gentleman, two-time Contender Series winner. Um, Unfortunately, I actually have not been able to see that fight. I have seen the Myron Dennis fight, and
Mm-hmm.
I believe I did actually see the Nell Bartland fight, but I haven't actually saw the Bevon Lewis fight.
Mm-hmm.
Um, can you
It's a
tell me
fun
about
one.
it, brother?
Yeah, yeah. It was a fun one. So, we kind of came out and traded just a couple, not even very many. And then he kind of shot on me actually, rather than me even having to shoot on him. And we're tied up. Was a little bit of cage wrestling going on there for a little bit.
Yeah.
Couple exchanges there, and then gosh, we separated. Um, a little bit more cage wrestling, a little bit of back and forth, and then he shot on me again. I stuffed it. I pushed him to the cage. I hit him with the knee to the body, and then I came over the top with an elbow and I rocked him.
Yeah.
And then from there, I just unloaded on him. And then I unloaded on him, took him down, got both hooks in, got on top, and just ground and pounded him out.
And I bet that was surprising for you to see someone like him try to shoot on you.
Yeah, I was like, dude, what are you doing? Like, why? Like, why are you shooting on me? Um, no disrespect whatsoever, but it just didn't seem it didn't seem like that would be his path to victory. You would
Right.
figure his path to victory would be, outstriking me.
Right.
Um, but hey, it was to each his own. I guess that's what he wanted to do. So
I mean, I guess it just makes your job easier, um,
right,
because obviously you have that preference right there to grapple and to shoot for takedowns. And
exactly.
what even makes it more surprising, dude, beating caliber fighters like that, is the fact that you mentioned earlier that you really did not have any other fighting experience. You didn't wrestle, you didn't
Nope.
really do boxing in a while. So obviously, important question here. Um, why the change? Why the change in paths here? Because I mean, obviously, before you were a college basketball player, I believe.
Yeah,
And
yeah. So I was playing basketball in college, and
yeah.
I kind of started to make some stupid decisions. And I was playing basketball at a Christian school called Southwest Baptist University.
Mhm.
Um, and I was coming to the end of my sophomore year, and I'd gotten in trouble. Gotten in trouble with weed related stuff, and then also had gotten my baby mama pregnant. So
Right.
I it was kind of a double whammy of a situation. And I remember I went and I told the coach, and honestly, I'd kind of lost a lot of the passion that I had for basketball. I'd gotten really lazy with it, anyways, if I'm being completely honest with myself.
Okay.
Um, so I kind of stopped playing basketball. And then that summer, after my sophomore year of college, this would have been the summer of 2019. Um, I had just never not been an athlete. Like I had never my whole life. I'd always had practice. I'd always had some form of athletics going on. And after just one summer of that, I had gained a lot of weight, and I was very, very, very unhappy. So I had a buddy from high school that was a purple belt at one of the local gyms here in town, and
Yeah.
I shot him a message, and I was like, "Hey, man, how do I start jujitsu? Because it seems kind of fun." I'd always been a fan of MMA. I remember the first time I really started to become a bigger fan of MMA was Silva Son and 2.
Oh
I remember
yeah.
seeing how much crap Chael was talking, and I was like, man, this is kind of cool. And then also, I liked wrestling when I was a kid. I still like wrestling, and I thought Brock Lesnar was cool too. So I kind of always been a fan of MMA, and I just asked my buddy, I was like, hey man, how do I start jujitsu? And he was like, dude, literally just come to the gym and you can train. We you get a week for free, and you can see if you like it. And I went in there and I really enjoyed it. And kind of from there, originally I didn't even plan necessarily. I kind of wanted to fight, but I was really just seeing how I would take to it. And then I remember I had been training for probably about 6 weeks just doing jujitsu. And I went to an MMA class, and I decided to spar. I had never sparred before. So I'd hardly ever been punched in the face in my life. And I remember the first time I got hit clean in the face. I was sparring with a pro fighter named Tony Grant, and he hit me
Hmm.
clean with a clean overhand right. And I just remember being not feeling any feelings of like that I didn't want to do it anymore, but feeling like I was having fun and that I wanted to hit him back.
Right.
And then from that was kind of the moment where I was like, man, I think I actually want to really try to do this. And I remember as soon as practice ended that day, I was only 6 weeks into training. But there was a fight card that some of the guys were getting ready to fight on, and it was in I want to say like 3 months or something like that, like 2.5 or 3 months. So
Hmm.
by the time the fight card came around, I would have been like 4 months into training. Um, with zero background once again, just 4 months of MMA and jiu-jitsu. And I asked my coach, I was like, do you think I could do an amateur fight on there? And he was like, yeah, sure, you can give it a go. So they got me that first fight, and my first fight I won by knockout in the second round. So from there I was pretty hooked on it, and I got pretty obsessive.
And I know right there, getting a knockout like that has to feel very satisfying.
Yes, definitely. I was so nervous, man. Like I remember walking out to the cage and literally thinking in my head that if I could just run away and end it all at that moment and not even and never come back to it, I would have been okay with that.
Right.
But I kind of overcame that feeling of like I don't know if I can do this and being okay with the unknown. Which is something that I feel like has been one of the biggest learning experiences in my MMA career is that sometimes in life you don't know exactly what's going to happen, and that's okay.
I see. And obviously you were a good fan for a long time about MMA, but it wasn't really in your mind at the time that it was really a passion to go forward in, right?
No, well, my whole childhood, I wanted to play basketball.
Right.
I wanted to get a scholarship to play basketball in college, and I was able to do that. And then when I got to college, I wanted to be the best player on the team. And the first school I went to, for one, I think I was just too immature to listen to my coaches because I
Mhm.
actually had incredible coaches. I went to Drury University to start off, and my coach, the guy that was coaching me, is literally in the Hall of Fame in Missouri. Like he's an amazing coach, but I
Uh
was just too immature to listen to him, and I thought I was better than I was, so I wanted to go somewhere where I could try to be the best player. Um, and I don't know, I had never thought that I would actually do anything like MMA. I wasn't. I've never even been in a fight outside of the cage. So
right.
like I wasn't like a lot. I hear fighters all the time say like they grew up fighting and all this stuff. Well, I grew up in a basketball gym. You know what I mean? So it's definitely been interesting. It's still surreal to me all the time that I do this stuff. Like every time that I'm in the back before the show starts, kind of in that little locker room area, I'm always like, man, this is really cool that I get to do this. And then also just I'm 25 years old. All my buddies that I grew up with, almost all the guys I played basketball with. There's a couple of them playing professionally in Europe now, but almost everyone is done with their athletic career. So the fact that I'm still getting to have an athletic career and have people cheer me on and that sort of thing is really 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 cool.
Yeah, man, and I know a whole lot of your family. I know your family for sure is proud of you and what you have been able to do so far, and really just seems like that you've really found your calling, and you have been very mature about pretty much everything so far in your professional career and amateur career, and you have been able to take pretty much everything that's been thrown at you, man, and you just overcome it, man. Whether that has been your first amateur loss or other things, several things.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that
Man,
debut, sorry,
no, you continue.
just yeah, I just gotta clear it up real quick. That debut, that was against Ryan Graves, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that was my first ever fight, man. And dude, I've just been really lucky, you know. My mama raised me right. I've got a good wife, two beautiful daughters. My wife supports me in everything I do.
Life is
She
good.
keep, yeah, dude, she keeps me honest. You know, if I try to slack on training or skip my running, she's like, no, you're going to the gym. If you're going to pursue this thing, you're going to do it all the way. And having her in my corner has been huge. If you look at my amateur record, you'll see that at one point I lost 3 out of 4 fights and I was 4-3.
Yeah.
And then me and her got together about a week after that that third amateur loss. So I have not lost a fight since. So I think things have definitely gone pretty well.
Well, that is a very good woman, and obviously you just have a lot to fight for. And I mean,
Exactly.
for many fighters, that is their motivation right there, and it seems like that it's yours as well.
100%.
Yeah, man. I do also, before we actually head off here, because we are almost at the 1 hour mark, I do
Mm-hmm.
actually want to ask you, obviously, who do you believe has been your inspiration really for all of this in your mixed martial arts career? I know we just talked about your wife and your mother,
Mm-hmm.
and I do feel like it really comes down to them as well. Probably both of them, obviously, your
Yeah,
children as well.
yeah, definitely both of them. Definitely my kids. One big one would be my grandfather. My grandfather is one of the hardest working people that you'll ever meet.
Yeah,
He's got two artificial knees, an artificial hip. He's got stents in his heart.
no,
Um, and the guy, like, he still works hours out of every day. I remember when he got his knee replaced, he was outside mowing the lawn within a couple days. Um, at this point in his life, the level of hard that he works is probably almost a danger to himself. But
yeah.
I've heard my grandpa say multiple times that if he can't work, he would rather be dead. So he's always been an inspiration to me, just in that show me. He kind of showed me when I was a kid what hard work really is. So I definitely want to give him some credit as one of my big inspirations in life.
Yeah, and I understand that too, man. I have had a grandfather himself who passed away, and he had stems as well, and
Hmm.
obviously him and my dad were just very much hard workers. They still are. But like I said, my grandfather passed away. My dad sometimes still works part time.
Hmm.
But now he's got disability, so obviously that ain't going to be happening no more. Thank God. Um, and yeah, man, just I absolutely understand your reasoning and your motivation for all of that, man. So because they have truly been my inspiration as well, dude. Um,
It's a huge
Jill,
blessing.
yes, absolutely. Um, well, man, I guess just how I want to wrap this up, and final question here for you. Obviously, you got a good podcast for you right here, and hopefully, this is going to blow up pretty good and be my biggest episode yet. I wanted to ask if you actually have anything to say to your upcoming opponent, Currier. I'm not sure if you guys actually have a press conference or not, but is there any message that you would like to deliver to your opponent that's coming up on March 1st?
Man, you know, the biggest thing, the only message that I would have for him is just keep training hard. I'm excited for our fight, and we'll see what happens. I don't really feel the need to talk any crap to the guy. I think that whenever we get in the cage, the work will show.
And that is very good words, my friend. All right, well, folks, uh, we are going to go ahead and wrap it up here as we get into the 1 hour mark in just about 20 seconds. This has been episode 4 of the Mixed Martial Marks podcast, sponsored by FuckItTees.com. Very honored to have a professional fighter like Julius Walker himself. And I really hope he enjoyed the episode and the podcast. Just calling with me here. And Julius, is there anything that you would like to say to your fans and people possibly watching this?
Man, well, huge shout out to my wife, my mom. Shout out to my little sisters, Alyssa and Olivia, my two daughters, Rainey and Josie, my entire family, my team, my coaches. Shout out to all my sponsors. I really appreciate everybody for all the help, and I'm looking forward to knocking out Mark Currier on March 1st.
I see, my friend. And hey, maybe one day we'll have this podcast again with you. I'd love to have you again.
Dude, I'd love that.
All right, man. Well, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope all of you enjoyed that will be watching episode 4. This is the MMA Mark Jacob Chaney, and of course, the 6-0 undefeated professional and next man, I would say the next UFC light heavyweight champion, Julius Walker, signing out. So we'll see you guys later.
Peace.